Hi, this is an introductory grammar lesson designed specifically for German learners who are just getting started. If grammar terms like noun and verb sometimes confuse you, I'm here today to explain what those terms mean and what they look like in a beginner's German lesson. I will give examples in both English and German. This video is a great starting point for learning German because instructors like me use the terms defined here all the time in our grammar lessons, and you're going to want to know what they mean right at the beginning. Also, welcome! Thanks for being here. I'm Laura Calabrese, and this is German with a Linguist. Today, we're going to be talking about some important grammar terms, and we're going to start with nouns. A simple way of explaining nouns is that they are words for people, places, things, and ideas. A few examples include das Mädchen, the girl, Berlin, Berlin, der Tisch, the table, and die Angst, the fear. You may have noticed two things about these examples. First of all, a noun can usually be accompanied by the word the. Our examples, once again, were das Mädchen, Berlin, der Tisch, and die Angst. The nouns here were Mädchen, girl, Berlin, Berlin, Tisch, table, and Angst, fear. The other word that went along with them sometimes was das, the, der, the, and die, the. Yes, there's more than one word for the in German. The other thing you might have noticed is that the nouns Mädchen, Berlin, Tisch, and Angst, the nouns were capitalized. And that's always true about nouns in German. German nouns carry gender. There are 3 genders in German: masculine, feminine, and neuter. My advice is don't get too hung up on it if you think it's weird that a table can be a he. Noun classes, or noun genders, they help you categorize things, and your brain loves to categorize things. Here's a quiz. I'm going to give you a sentence in English and German, and let's see if you can identify which of the words in that sentence are nouns. The dog and the cat play with the red ball on the carpet. Der Hund und die Katze spielen mit dem roten Ball auf dem Teppich. Pause if you need a moment to think, because here are the answers: dog, cat, ball, and carpet. Hund, Katze, Ball, and Teppich. Now that you know what a noun is, the next term I want to define is a noun phrase. A noun phrase is a group of words. It could be 20 words long, or it could just be 2 words long, but it's at least 2 words long. And that group of words has a noun as its anchor. There's a noun that's basically the most important word in that phrase. Here are some examples of some noun phrases. Ein glückliches deutsches Mädchen. A happy German girl. Mädchen, girl, is the noun. 7 braune Pferde. 7 brown horses. The noun is Pferde, horses. Bunte Vögel in den Bäumen. Colorful birds in the trees. This example is interesting because it has more than one noun. What are the nouns? Vögel, birds, and Bäumen, trees. How do you know which noun is the head noun? Well, I'll explain it this way. One of these nouns is in a phrase, think of it as a subphrase. It's in a phrase that describes or modifies the other noun. So we have bunte Vögel in den Bäumen, colorful birds in the trees. So does in den Bäumen, in the trees, describe the birds? Or does the birds, bunte Vögel, describe the trees? I hope that made sense in that example why birds was the main noun in that noun phrase. Now remember, a noun phrase can be as short as 2 words. Here are some examples. Eine Frau, a woman. or der Tisch, the table. A pronoun is a word that replaces a noun or a noun phrase. There are a bunch of different kinds of pronouns, but I'm just going to go over the personal pronouns in the nominative case because this is a video for beginners. The German personal pronouns in the nominative case are as follows. Ich means I. Du means you in the singular and informal sense. So, you, a child, or you, my friend, but just one. Means he. Sie means she. Es means it. Wir means we. Ihr means you guys. So it's informal and plural. Sie means they. And sie again, but capitalized, capital S-I-E, means you formal. And this sie can be singular or plural. Here's your pronouns quiz. I'm going to give you a sentence. It's actually 2 sentences. And I'm going to give it to you in English and in German. And I want you to identify all the pronouns in it. Benno and I are going home. We are tired and he wants to sleep. Benno und ich gehen nach Hause. Wir sind müde und will schlafen. Ready? The pronouns in that text were I, we, and he. In German, ich, wir, and Okay, next up I'm going to be talking about verbs, but first I want to talk about clauses really quick because it's going to be helpful to understand what a clause is when we are talking about verbs. A clause is a phrase. It can be a whole sentence, or it can sound more like half a sentence, and it's defined by 2 things. Technically, it's defined by a subject and a verb, but let's talk about that in simpler terms because we haven't defined those things yet. So let's look at these core requirements of a clause. We've got subject and a verb. So the subject, it can be a noun or a noun phrase or a pronoun. We know what all of those things are. And a verb is a word that expresses an action or a state of being. So an example of a verb would be runs, to run. So a whole clause would be the man, that's a noun phrase, the man runs. And what makes the man the subject of the verb runs is that the man is in charge of the verb. So it's not, I run at the man, because then I would be the subject of run. But the man runs. So now we have the man being in charge of runs. So the man runs, that's a whole clause. So basically, I'm just trying to say it has to be grammatical. You can't have the man to run because that's a noun and a verb, but the noun isn't the subject of the verb. I hope that was clear. There are 2 different kinds of clauses, though. There are dependent clauses and independent clauses. So let's discuss really quickly what the difference is between dependent clauses and independent clauses, and then we're going to get to verbs. And it's actually pretty simple. So an independent clause is independent. It means that the clause can stand alone as a complete sentence. Here are some examples. She eats. Sie isst. I like dogs. Ich mag Hunde. And Philip works until late in the night. Philip arbeitet bis spät in die Nacht. There are also dependent clauses. Dependent meaning they can't stand alone as a full sentence. Here are some examples. Because I was hungry, weil ich Hunger hatte. Or, although the dog was small, obwohl der Hund klein war. You can tell that these are dependent clauses because they have although and because at the beginning. So these are subordinators. And we don't have to get way into it, but you can kind of you have a feeling that these are incomplete, don't you? Because there's something missing when you say because I was hungry, you're waiting for something. So because I was hungry, well, so that's an incomplete sentence, and so it's a dependent clause, but it is still a clause. You should know that you can have more than one clause in a sentence. You don't have to, but you can. You can even have more than one independent clause in a sentence. A verb is a word that expresses an action or a state of being. Some examples are schwimmen, to swim, and wissen, to know. Let's conjugate the most common verb in the German language, to be, sein. Ich bin. Du bist. Sie, es ist. Wir sind. Ihr seid. Sie sind. Sie sind. Notice that when we conjugate, we change the verb to agree with the different pronouns or grammatical persons, and that this verb changes a lot as opposed to in English where it really doesn't change that much, where we have I am, you are, he, she, it is, and then we are again, you are, they are. I mean, that's an irregular verb even. So German, it changes a lot. So conjugation is much more complicated in German than it is in English. But that's what conjugation is when you change the verb to make it agree with the different grammatical persons or pronouns. Think of it that way. One of the most important rules about verbs, or about the German language at all, that you're ever going to learn is that German is a V2 language. So V2, verb second, but it doesn't mean second word in the sentence. The verb is sometimes the second word in a sentence, but that's not the rule. V2 means that the verb is in second position. First position in the sentence could be a noun, could be a noun phrase, could be a prepositional phrase, it could be a whole clause, it could be lots of things. But the point is that these things are contained. So when I say phrase, it could be 4 words, it could be 2 words, it could be 3 words, it could be 20 words, but it's contained in a phrase that all goes together. I've got some examples for you. Mein kleiner Bruder spielt Fußball. My little brother plays soccer. My little brother, mein kleiner Bruder, is a noun phrase. You wouldn't separate it. You don't split it up. So mein kleiner Bruder is in position 1, but in position 2 has to be the verb. So mein kleiner Bruder spielt, plays Fußball. Mein kleiner Bruder spielt Fußball. My little brother plays soccer. Here's another example. In this example, the prepositional phrase is going to be in first position, but in second position, it's going to be the verb, because the verb is always in second position in independent clauses in German. So here's the other example. Am Morgen trinkt das Kind Milch. In the morning, the child drinks milk. Now notice that in English, you can have in the morning the child. But in German, you need prepositional phrase am Morgen, and then you need trinkt. That has to be in second position. And then you can have more stuff. But trinkt has to be in second position. So am Morgen trinkt das Kind Milch. In the morning, drinks the child milk. Here's your verbs quiz. Can you identify the verbs in the following sentence? I study German and the dog plays in the yard. Ich lerne Deutsch und der Hund spielt im Garten. The verbs were study and plays, lerne and spielt. Now let's talk about prepositions. A preposition connects its object, which is usually a noun phrase, or a pronoun, and it connects that to part of the rest of the sentence. So prepositions are used to express relationships between that object and another part of the sentence. Relationships like time, space, direction, also means, manner, and cause. So here's an example sentence with a prepositional phrase in it. So with a preposition in it. Das Buch liegt auf dem Tisch. The book is on the table. The preposition is auf, on, and the noun phrase that follows it is the object of the preposition, dem Tisch, the table. Together, auf dem Tisch, that is called the prepositional phrase. So dem Tisch, that's the object of the preposition, And auf dem Tisch is the prepositional phrase. You'll notice that auf, on, expresses a relationship in space between the book and the table. So that's kind of what I was saying before, that relationship between the object and the rest of the sentence. Here are some more examples of prepositional phrases in German and English that show spatial relationships. So, places. Unter dem Bett, under the bed. Unter means under, and that's a preposition. In der Stadt, in the city. In means in, and that's a preposition. Neben der Tür, next to the door. Neben means next to, and that's a preposition. Here are some examples that show temporal relationships or relationships with time. Nach dem Essen, after the meal. Nach is a preposition, and it means after. Vor der Schule, before school. Vor means before, and that's the preposition in that one. Here are some examples of prepositions that show direction. Über die Brücke, over the bridge, or durch den Wald, through the forest. Über means over, and durch means through. Those are prepositions. Here's some examples of prepositions of cause. Wegen and dank. So some examples are wegen des Regens, due to the rain. Wegen, due to. And dank deiner Hilfe, thanks to your help. Thanks to. Here's some examples of prepositions of means. And when I say means, I mean how something was done. Mit dem Auto, with the car, or per Post, by mail. So mit, with, and per, by. Those are prepositions. I hope that gave you a good sense of what a preposition was with all those examples. Now we're going to do a quiz. Can you identify the prepositions in the following sentence? The cat sleeps on the sofa in the living room. Die Katze schläft auf dem Sofa in dem Wohnzimmer. The prepositions were on, from on the sofa, and in, from in the living room. Auf, from auf dem Sofa, and in, from in dem Wohnzimmer. Hey, welcome to the end of the video. If you learned something, click like, and you should also subscribe for more from German with a Linguist.